All right, morning, boys and girls. We are on Module 6, Lesson 5. I have 2 dogs with me this morning, so it probably will not go very well. And at some point, I'll probably have to send Izzy out because she's just all over the place. And they're trying to fight right now. It's great. They don't really care that there's a lot going on. Anyway, so today's objective is model the equivalence of tenths and hundredths using area. It says area mode. I wonder if it's supposed to be area model. Area mode and place value discs. Either way, it doesn't really matter. A lot of today's is kind of more of a review for you. None of it will look very different, but we're just kind of adding in another step, but you'll be able to follow along pretty easily. Yesterday's, I think, was a little bit harder, but today's makes a little more sense. And some of the things that I did yesterday and that I reminded you of will come again today. So what we're going to be using are like the place value discs that we don't actually have, that we'll just draw for 1/10 and for 1/100th. So I'm going to show you how to draw that. And we're going to model some of them with the area model too. So, you know, with the big 10 frame, the big chart. And we didn't do that yesterday with the big square chart, but we did do it yesterday with like a tape diagram, and then we cut each one into tenths. Remember with the meter, and it was 1/100th. So I'm just gonna go a little closer right now, and yeah. So we're going to actually just kind of jump right to the problem set. I think it'll be easier for you to follow along if we start with that. The first part says find the equivalent fraction using multiplication or division. Shade the area models to show the equivalency recorded as a decimal. So when we were talking yesterday, I said 3/10. Well, I'm just gonna use this one as an example. When we had this drawn, right? And let's pretend that I'm breaking that into tenths right now, which I'm clearly not doing a very good job with. But we'll just, that just keeps going, right? So if we were doing 3/10, we would have shaded in these 3, correct? And that would be 3/10 when we actually have 10. But then we broke this into 10 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we would break each one into 10 parts. And that would give us 10, 20, 30. So that gives us 30 100ths, right? But then I reminded you that we could also do this, right? 3 times 10 is 30, 10 times 10 is 100. That makes them equivalent fractions. And here we can show that they're equivalent, and here we can almost just do it, I guess. So we're going to do the same thing today at the beginning, and we're going to, instead of using the model like we did yesterday, we're using a giant one. This might be easier. We'll see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that's not too bad, right? All right, so this first one is 3/10. Now, I already showed you, and you can write this on your problem set. It says times. Well, that's where you're going to write 10, okay? And then it says blank over 100. Well, 3 times 10 is 30. So now we're going to show that here. It has 2 of these, and I'm only drawing one right now, just so you can, I don't waste all my time just drawing those. So there's 2 models, so you're going to color in the first 3 lines to show 3/10, right? Okay, but then you have another model, and you're like, oh, well, this is the same thing, except now they cut it going this way too. So now how many squares do you have? Instead of having 10 rectangles, basically you have 100 squares. And you already knew that. We've done those a million different times, right? So in your other one, I want you to color in the first 3, of course, and I'm going to draw my lines here. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so this is the second one. Oh, look, I did the first 3 here. That's great. Now, how many do I have here? I have 10, 20, 30. I have 30 hundredths colored in. I know, you're looking at me, you're like, we already did this kind of stuff. I already know this. I know, so that's great. So now we're already on B. Look at that. So B is 50 hundredths. So they started with 50 of these shaded in. So 50, whoa, hundredths. So now we're going to take away these 10 lines. I'm going to have to erase the whole thing, aren't I? I'm going to take away these 10 lines. So I'm actually dividing instead of multiplying. I bet you already knew that. 50 divided by 10 gives me 5, and 100 divided by 10 gives me 10. So you colored in 5 columns. As rows go across, columns are up and down. And now in that second one, you have to color in 5 tenths. So you'll color in 5 of those. I don't think you really need me to draw that, do you? I don't think so. I think you know how to do 5 tenths. You could take a picture and show me, that'd be great. All right, so number 2, complete the number sentences. Shade the equivalent amount on the area model, drawing horizontal lines to make hundredths. Okay, so that's what we did yesterday. We just did it going across like a tape diagram. Okay, today we're going to just use this kind of model. So I'm going to do this first, and then I'll fill out the numbers, okay, boys and girls? That way, because I don't want to try to squish it in the sides here. Ooh, that is not a very good square. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so this is what we're starting with. We're supposed to have 37 hundredths, and I know that 37 hundredths, and you already know this, I'm sure, and there should be a THS at the end. I know that that means 3 tenths, and that means 7 hundredths. Just like yesterday, we did 3 tenths, and that means 7 hundredths, correct? So I already know that I could color in 3 of these, but then I have to color in 7 in here, which means we need to create 7. Actually, we need to create 10, right? So this is what you're doing too. You're drawing these lines. So we draw 9 of them, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so now we're coloring in 3 tenths. And no, you don't actually have to write that, but I just find that easier. 3 tenths. And then we're going to do 7 more, so 7 hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Remember, 3 tenths is the same as 30 hundredths. Okay, so here's our model. Now I'm going to erase the, well, maybe I can just fit it over here so I can show you, I guess. So 37 hundredths is 3 tenths and 7 hundredths. So even though I wrote it this way, you can write just the 3 on the line and the 7 on the line. In fraction form, it's going to look like 37 hundredths, right? And then in decimal form, we have our 3 tenths and our 7 hundredths. This is the hundredths place value, and this is the tenths place value. Remember, I've showed you the chart before. I just realized though too, in number 1, we are supposed to record it as a decimal also. So I'm going to jump back to that. I apologize. We are writing 30 hundredths in A, so 30 hundredths is the same as saying 30 hundredths. Now you can also write it like this because 30 hundredths is the same as 3/10. And then it's the same thing for B. We started with 50 hundredths, but then we divided by 10 because it is equivalent, and we have 5/10, so we write it like this. Now if you wrote a 0 here, it would say 50 hundredths, but we know that that's the same as 5/10. So I apologize for that. If you would go back and do that. Okay, so in B, boys and girls, so now I'm back to 2B. I'm sorry for jumping around. We have 75 hundredths. Now I'm just going to write it like this, okay? I know that I can pull out 7/10, which also means 70 hundredths. And I can pull out 5 100ths, okay? So I just kind of am leaving that. First thing you need to do is draw these horizontal lines. So go ahead and draw those lines. And now I need to color in 7/10, which I know is equivalent to 70 hundredths, but that means I can do 7 rows, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now 5 hundredths. So that's what it looks like. Okay? So now I'm going to erase this part so I can finish up the actual writing here. I miss writing on the desk, boys and girls. This is not as fun. So 75 hundredths is 7/10 and 5 hundredths. Okay? In fraction form, it is 75 hundredths, right? And in decimal form, it is 7/10, 5 hundredths. Okay, so now in number 3, we're going to go back to our place value, the place value discs. I actually have some of these at school, but they would be way too small to try to use here. So we have our place value discs. 0.1 stands for 1/10, okay? 0.01 stands for 1/100th. Remember, even though we haven't really been using a place value chart, we have tens, ones, then we have our decimal, then we have tenths, and then we have hundredths. And I don't have enough room to write the whole thing, okay? So we look at it like this. We don't have any ones for 1/10. We have 1/10 there. And then if you have 100ths and you don't have a tenth, it's 0.01. Okay, so that's what we have to remember today, what 1/10 looks like and what 1/100th looks like. Now you already know what 1/10 looks like. It's the 100th. That one's a little harder, so remember that is the tenths and that is the 100th place value. Okay, so that's what we're gonna remember today. And the rest of it isn't too bad at all. So they gave us a number. Well, the number's over on the right side, but I think they just did that for us. I think we have to do it on the next one. So circle the hundredths to compose as many tenths as you can. So how many hundredths do we want? Picture our tape diagram and picture each one. How many of the little guys made up the big guy? So how many, we had to divide that into 10 parts, right? So 10 hundredths make 1/10. So just kind of picture that, or picture the big one we did today, and one column of those had 10. So we want you to put a picture in your head there. All right, so complete the number sentences, represent each with a number bond as shown. This is what's gonna take me so long is just drawing these right now. It's really not that bad. So I'm gonna actually turn it so I can draw it quickly or quicker. Ooh, I'm drawing them really big right now. And I'm not drawing it the right way. It's not bad, but writing 0.01 on all of these is the long part. Okay, so how did I do it wrong? Well, I didn't do it exactly wrong, but these two in your book are over on this side, and sorry, I ran out of room because I made them so big. All right, so we want to circle groups of 10. That's always what we always want to find that 10 frame. We always want to find that 10, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So box around it, and then you're going to have 2 off to the side over here. How many tenths is that? So these were hundredths, and we put 10 of them together, which gives us 1/10. Okay? So, oh, well, I probably should have started with how many hundredths there are altogether. All we had to do is count that. 10, 11, 12. So on your paper, you write 12 hundredths. See at the bottom there? We have 12 of these all together. And now we're going to separate it, and we're going to say that's 1/10. And how many extra hundredths? 2 hundredths. Now I know you're saying to yourself, I already knew that that was 1/10 and 2 hundredths. I mean, I've been talking to you about that for a few days now, that means 1/10 and 2 hundredths. Why are we doing this? Because we are showing it in different ways. We want you to understand that a bundle of 10 of these makes 1/10. We want you to understand if we had a tape diagram and you divided each tenth into 10 parts, that's 1/100th. We want you to understand in that the big giant square that when we separate it into 100 pieces, there are 10 of them in each tenth of it. So we really want you to just really understand in your head where this is coming from. I know that a lot of you are like, I don't need to do this, but I've told you so many different times, boys and girls, that we want you to really understand in your head what we're doing so you can do it really well. So that's why we're doing this. Now, the last thing we need to do is a number bond for this. So 12 hundredths, we write it like this, 0.12, okay? And just like yesterday, we're going to separate this into tenths and hundredths. This is 1/10. Now we know that we could multiply it by 10, and that would be 10 hundredths, and that's 2 hundredths. Okay, so now we're done with that one. So let's go to B. Now B, if I write all of the 0.01, all the hundredths in here, it's going to take me forever. So I'm just going to do circles right now, but you have your problem set that shows it, okay? So we're just going to know that these each stand for 1, oh my goodness, 1/100th. All right, so first thing we do, of course, is we're bundling groups of 10, right? Let's make our life easier. 10, 20. How many do we have all together? We have 10, 20, 25, 26, 27. That means we have 27 hundredths. I don't have room for my S. Okay, how many tenths do we have? How many groups do we have? We have 2 groups. So that means we have 2 tenths. And how many hundredths? How many are extra? We have 7 hundredths. Okay, now the last thing we have to do is a number bond, but I have to erase this first. I actually really like today's work. I'm sure some of you are like, I already know how to do this, but 27 hundredths. Well, let's write that in decimal form. 0 ones, 2 tens, 7 hundredths, right? 27 hundredths. That's how we say it. So this has 2 tenths. I said 2 tens. I meant to say 2 tenths. And this has 7 hundredths. And there's our number bond. Now, part 4 is basically you get to draw the place value discs. Okay, so all we have to do is figure out the decimal form, how many hundredths or tenths and hundredths or just tenths, and then draw our own place value discs. So A is 3 hundredths, right? So how do we write that in decimal form? 0. Do we have any tenths? No. So 0, but now we have hundredths. So there's our decimal form. So how many hundredths do we have? We have 3 hundredths. Okay? And then we get to draw. Let's draw 3 hundredths with our place value discs. 0.01. And that's that. That's not bad, is it? Okay, now B, we have 15 hundredths, right? Now, how do we write that in decimal form? 0. We have 1/10, and we have 5 hundredths. 15 hundredths. This is 15 hundredths, right? Okay, so how many tenths do we have? We have 1/10, and how many hundredths? I'm just going to put or not a decimal, but I'm not going to write the whole thing out. We have 5 hundredths. Okay, so now, no, we don't have to draw 15 hundredths. Is that what you were thinking? We get to draw 1/10, and then how many hundredths? 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. 0.01. So be careful with that. 0.01, 0.01, 0.01. Okay. And then let's start. Oh dear. C. We have, we get to make the fraction. So it says, that decimal says 72 hundredths. So that means we have 72 hundredths. That was the easy part, wasn't it? So how many hundredths do we have? We have 72 hundredths. Okay, so how are we going to draw this? We know that we have 7 tenths and 2 hundredths. So no, we don't have to draw 72 hundredths. We can draw 7 tenths. 4, 5, 6, 7 tenths. So tenths are 0.1. And now we need 2 hundredths. So I like to do them kind of separately, 0.01 and 0.01. Just be careful with writing tenths and writing hundredths. That's where you have to stop and actually think about, wait, how is this written? Okay, so D, I love D. D shows us 80 hundredths. Why am I saying that? Because the line says tenths, but it shows us 0.80. This number is 80, right? It's 80 hundredths. So why are they saying we should do it in tenths? Well, because we can use our knowledge and know that we can divide this. So 80 hundredths is the same as saying 8 tenths. You probably didn't even need to divide that. You just know. If you were picturing that giant square that had 100 squares in it, you know that 80 of them means 8 of the columns. 8 tenths, right? So our answer for our fraction is actually 8 tenths. If you put 80 hundredths, I would be perfectly fine with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. You just have to be careful because the next line says tenths. So you don't want to put 80 tenths. We don't have 80 tenths. We have 8 tenths. Okay, so they're trying to trick you a little. So this is the answer we're looking for in fraction form. But if you had written that, I would have been good because that's what it says here, 80 hundredths. So 80 hundredths is perfectly fine too. But you just have to be careful with the tenths. So what are we drawing? We are drawing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tenths. 0.1, right? 0.1. Okay. So E is the same exact thing as C, pretty much. I probably shouldn't have told you that. I should have let you figure that out. But it says 7 tenths and 2 hundredths. So let's draw it out first. 7 tenths, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0.1. Remember, these are tenths. We need 7 of these, 7 tenths. And then we need 2 hundredths, 0.01, 0.01. All right, so what is our fraction? Well, that would be 7 tenths and 2 hundredths would be 72 hundredths, right? So our fraction is 72 hundredths, and our decimal would be 0.72. So pretty much the same. And F, we'll take a look at F. F says 80 hundredths. Do we really want to draw 80 hundredths? What is the same as 80 hundredths? Think back, even if you want, you can look at your giant area model. 80 hundredths is going to be the same as what? If I write 8, so I'm going to write it 2 ways. I'm going to write 80 hundredths, and I'm going to write it like this. Okay? They both say the same thing, right? 80 hundredths, 80 hundredths. 80 hundredths is the same as 8 tenths. And instead of writing it like that, could we write it like that? Yes, we can. So 8 tenths. So here is our fraction, and here is our decimal. Could you write it like this? Yes. It does say 80 hundredths in their words, so they want it like these two. They want you to say 80 hundredths, but we do know that it's equivalent to 8 tenths. Why is it so important right now? I don't want to draw 80 little circles. Nope. I know that I can draw 8 tenths, and that represents 80 hundredths. So we can do 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, so we can do 8 tenths, 0.1. Whoops, that's a 1. Could you have drawn, just 1 second, could you have drawn 80, 0.01? Yep. But I know that I can bundle groups of 10. So, boys and girls, that is the lesson for today. I'm sure you're feeling pretty good about that. Well, you better be feeling pretty good about that. Today wasn't too bad, so can't wait till tomorrow.